Welcome back to another tale uncovering the darker side of history. Today's story takes us to Victorian Scotland and revolves around a young woman named Madeleine Smith, a socialite whose life took a tragic and scandalous turn. Her trial for the alleged poisoning of her lover, Emile L'Angelier, captivated the nation and left many unanswered questions that persist to this day. Was Madeleine guilty of murder, or was she unfairly accused because of societal pressures and an illicit affair? Let's unravel the mystery behind Madeleine Smith, the Scottish socialite, at the heart of one of history's most notorious murder trials. Madeleine Hamilton Smith was born in 1835 into an affluent family in Glasgow, Scotland. Her father, James Smith, was a well-known architect, and her family lived in relative comfort and privilege. As a young woman, Madeleine was raised with the expectations typical of a woman of her social standing. She was taught to maintain decorum, display impeccable manners, and, perhaps most importantly, marry well. During the mid-19th century, Scotland, like much of the world, was a society that prized reputation and social standing, especially for women. A woman like Madeleine was expected to make a good match that would not only secure her future, but also reflect well on her family. It was in this environment of social pressure that Madeleine grew up, and it was within these confines that her secret life would begin to unfold. In 1855, when Madeleine was just 20 years old, she met Emile L'Angelier. L'Angelier, a Frenchman working as a clerk in Glasgow, was from a much humbler background than Madeleine. Despite his lower social standing, the two became romantically involved, a relationship that was kept entirely secret from her family. This would have been seen as a scandalous match, given the vast social divide between them. Their affair, like many illicit relationships of the time, was fueled by secret meetings and an intense exchange of love letters. Madeleine, who had probably never experienced such passion before, was enthralled by the dashing Frenchman, and their letters to each other grew increasingly intimate. Madeleine spoke of love, longing, and her desire to be with Emile despite the difficulties their relationship faced. But as time passed, the initial passion that had drawn Madeleine to Emile began to fade. The social constraints of her world, along with her family's expectations, loomed over her, and soon Madeleine began to feel trapped by the affair. By 1856, Madeleine's life had taken a significant turn. Her parents, unaware of her affair and promised to marry Emile, arranged an engagement to another man, William Minnock. Minnock was a much more socially acceptable suitor, a wealthy and respected merchant who could offer her a future that aligned with her family's expectations. However, there was still the issue of Emile. L'Angelier, who had become deeply attached to Madeleine, was not ready to let her go so easily. When she tried to end the relationship and asked for her correspondence back, Emile threatened to reveal their affair to her family. He held on to the letters Madeleine had written him, letters that, if exposed, would undoubtedly cause her ruin. Victorian society was notoriously unforgiving when it came to the reputations of women, and for Madeleine, the consequences of exposure would be catastrophic. Her future marriage, her standing in society, and even her relationship with her family would be in jeopardy. With Emile unwilling to walk away quietly, Madeleine found herself in a precarious position. She continued to meet with him, though her feelings had clearly shifted. What had once been a passionate affair had now turned into a source of stress and fear for Madeleine, and she grew increasingly desperate to break free. In February 1857, Emile L'Angelier fell seriously ill. He suffered from intense stomach pain, vomiting, and other symptoms consistent with arsenic poisoning. Over the course of several weeks, his condition worsened, and on March 23, 1857, Emile died. His sudden death immediately raised suspicion, particularly when an autopsy revealed that Emile had been poisoned with arsenic. At the time, arsenic was a common household item. It was often used as rat poison, and in small amounts, it was even used by women for cosmetic purposes to lighten their skin. However, in larger doses, arsenic is deadly. When the police searched the house where L'Angelier lodged, they found a bundle of the love letters he had kept from Madeleine among his personal effects. These letters, filled with passionate declarations, were now evidence that linked her directly to Emile and potentially to his murder. Adding to the suspicion, the authorities discovered that just a few days before Emile's death, Madeleine had purchased arsenic from a local chemist. When questioned, Madeleine claimed that the arsenic was for cosmetic use, a practice not uncommon among women of the time. But this explanation, coupled with the fact that she had been in a tumultuous relationship with Emile, was enough for authorities to arrest her and charge her with his murder. Madeleine's trial began in June 1857 and quickly became one of the most sensational court cases of the time. The trial was held in Edinburgh, and it attracted widespread media attention. Newspapers across Scotland, and indeed throughout Britain, published every detail of the proceedings. The public was fascinated by the story of a young socialite accused of such a heinous crime, and people flocked to the courtroom to witness the spectacle. The prosecution's case centered around the letters between Madeleine and Emile, which show the progression of their relationship from passionate romance to something more fraught with tension. The prosecution also emphasized the fact that Madeleine had purchased arsenic, suggesting that she had used it to poison Emile. However, the defense argued that there was no direct evidence linking Madeleine to the actual administration of the poison. The letters, while damning in terms of revealing the nature of the relationship, did not prove that she had killed Emile. Moreover, it was suggested that Emile himself may have been taking arsenic voluntarily. Some men at the time believed that arsenic could act as a stimulant or tonic, and it wasn't unheard of for men to consume it in small doses. After weeks of testimony and cross-examination, the jury reached its verdict: not proven. This unique Scottish verdict means that the jury was not convinced of Madeleine's guilt, but neither were they fully convinced of her innocence. Essentially, it was a declaration of doubt, leaving the case unresolved in the minds of many. Following the scandal, Madeleine's family was forced to abandon their Glasgow home and their beloved country villa, Rower Lane in Rue. They relocated to Bridge of Allan in central Scotland, seeking a fresh start away from the gossip that surrounded them. In 1860, they moved again to Old Polmont, but the strain of the affair had taken its toll on Madeleine's father. He died in 1863 at the age of 55, broken by the disgrace and turmoil his family had endured. On July 4, 1861, Madeleine married George Wardle, an artist and business manager for William Morris. The couple had 2 children, a daughter named Mary, affectionately called Kitten, born in 1863, and a son Thomas, born in 1864. For a time, Madeleine became active in London's intellectual circles, joining the Fabian Society and organising events with enthusiasm. Her new life as Mrs. Wardle allowed her to distance herself from her scandalous past, and while many people knew her by her married name, Only a few recognized her true identity. After many years of marriage, Madeleine and George separated in 1889, and she eventually moved to New York City. In 1916, she remarried, this time to William A. Sheehy. This marriage lasted until Sheehy's death in 1926, and Madeleine lived out the remainder of her days in relative obscurity in the United States. The case of Madeleine Smith remains one of Scotland's most famous unsolved mysteries. Was she truly guilty of poisoning her lover? Or was she the victim of unfortunate circumstances and a society that judged women harshly for stepping outside the bounds of respectability? The story of Madeleine Smith is a fascinating glimpse into the pressures of Victorian society, the dangers of secret romances, and the power of scandal. Whether she was guilty or not, the trial left an indelible mark on the public consciousness. It's a story that continues to provoke debate and speculation even today. What do you think? Was Madeleine Smith a cold-blooded murderer, or was she simply caught in a web of circumstances beyond her control? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for joining us as we explore the life of Madeleine Smith. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more historical crime stories. Stay tuned for more mysteries from the past. And remember, the truth is often stranger than fiction.